Let's get some analysis of those figures now from Danny Gabay. He's Managing Director of Fathom Financial Consulting. Danny, thanks very much. Just looking at this, I think you were predicting 0.3%, so not that far off. But, I mean, this is going to have an awful lot more focus on it than normal because of the timing, of course, right before the election.
Right. I mean, and to the extent the economy is recovering, it's really limping along. We, as you said, 0.3, we're a little bit below what the market was expecting, so it's a bit less of a surprise, but it's still a weak number. You add that to the unemployment data that we got earlier this week. Yeah. The employment numbers suggest the last 3 months, on average, 1,000 people lost a job every single day. The economy is clearly still in a lot of trouble.
Now, of course, all of this is going to be fed into the political machine because really it's very difficult at the moment to talk about the economy and fiscal policy without talking about the election, you know. Do you think, therefore, that the Conservatives will try and make the most of this, particularly with the jobs, the idea of the so-called jobs tax, the national insurance contribution?
I think it's a very difficult question to answer because if you actually follow the debate, the weaker the economy gets, it seems to play into Gordon Brown's hands. It seems to be more a case of, would you really trust these guys? At least I've been here, I know what I'm doing, and I won't imperil the so-called recovery. So I don't know which way it plays.
Now, the major issue, of course, is going to be all about cutting the deficit. Whatever we say about these numbers, that's really what has to happen. Is a coalition government, is a hung parliament the way to do that? Is that going to make it more difficult to take tough decisions?
I know the received wisdom is that a hung parliament or a coalition would be disastrous and they won't take the real decisions. But what I would counter that with, we have two examples in the past decade of countries which took on very significant fiscal deficits and successfully cut them without endangering the economy. Canada and Sweden. One had a minority government, the other one was coalition. That
is fascinating because it's absolutely against everything that we're hearing and everything that the Conservatives are also pumping out about the disaster that would be a hung parliament.
Of course, what you need is the whole country to come together to address the problem. Yeah. So even if it was a coalition or minority, there was clearly agreement amongst the political class and the people, which is important, that this required severe action. Because we're talking about they cut spending as a share of GDP by 10 percentage points, which is painful.
Absolutely. The problem is, of course, in this election so far, nobody wants to talk about those painful cuts. We haven't heard that yet from any of the leaders, talking about efficiency savings, which everyone thinks sound great because it doesn't sound like any frontline services are going to be cut. That's not going to do it, is it?
No. And it's not so great if you're one of the efficiency savings.
Of course.
What we know it means is you're going to have to cut public sector, the size of it and the scope and the scale of it. That's going to largely mean heads. It's also going to mean functions. The advantage the Conservatives and or the Liberals would have over the incumbent government is they're able to come in on May the 7th and say, good grief, we've looked at the books, it's way worse than we thought. We're going to have to do far more radical action. It's very hard for the incumbent government to say, actually, we had another look and it looks much worse than we thought. At the moment, they're all tinkering around at the edges.
Yes.
And, you know, 6 billion here, 6 billion there, over which quarter you start, isn't it? We're borrowing 170 billion a year. Yeah. And that's the kind of number that really needs to be in the focus.
No, we had Ken Clarke talking about how the IMF could possibly get called in. Is that scaremongering? Is that desperate? Or if something major doesn't happen, is that a possibility?
It's a clear possibility. I'm not sure how it plays politically, but let me give you one salient fact. The real exchange rate, sterling's real exchange rate, is about 1% above where it was when Jim Callaghan went to the IMF.
That's a very salient fact. On that note, we will end it. It's fascinating talking to you, Danny. Thanks so much for coming in.